The higher-ups at these big gaming companies are practically pitching tents at the idea of an all-digital future. Because think about it from their perspective, they get to sell you the same game for the same price without having to pay for a cartridge to put the game on and somebody, to make the cartridges, the packaging, and just shipping these games out. But among the big three gaming giants, it feels like the only one that is still invested in a physical future is Nintendo. And that's why people were kind of surprised at the idea of game keys. So what exactly are game keys? Well, Nintendo kind of introduced them as a new type of game. So essentially what's going to happen is you're going to be able to go to a store and purchase a game. Except when you open the game, you'll be able to find a cartridge. But when you insert your cartridge into the Switch, it doesn't necessarily play the game. Instead, it's going to prompt you to download the game. Instead of the game completely being on a cartridge, like we see here, instead it's just, as it said, a game key. It's a digital code in the cartridge that you don't have to type in the code, it'll just download the game. Nintendo first introduced this during the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, and for the most part, people have just sort of been confused about it. Which the biggest confusion is why they exist. Because most people will be quick to point out that if it's just a digital game key, why are we buying the physical game to begin with? You can just go to the eShop and download it and you don't have to physically displace yourself to go to the store and get it. But as time went on, new information started to surface, and allegedly, Nintendo only offers two sizes of game cartridges for people to put their games on. It's either a full-size 64GB or a smaller one so that you can use as a game key. Now, the reason why Nintendo would want such a limited amount of storage options is because if they can focus all their attention on just one size, they can buy bigger batches, meaning they're buying in bulk, meaning each cartridge themselves will be cheaper. But this kind of feels like it's backfiring. Because if you actually look at Nintendo Switch 2's launch lineup, it's pretty big, but you'll notice that not many of them actually are physically on the cartridge. Most of the games are game keys. Because of course, go figure that if you give a company the option to cut costs, they actually cut costs. But this whole idea isn't all that new now, is it? Because during the Switch generation, we did have something that was very similar, and that was codes in a box. So basically, there are some games that would have this blue border, and this blue border basically indicated that once you open the case, there was no game itself, it was just a game code. However, there's one factor that kind of separates these two ideas. A game code you can only use once, whereas the game key, you can use it as many times as you wish. So if I bought one and I borrowed it to you, you can also download the game. The only issue is when I borrow you the game, I won't be able to play it unless the game key is in my Switch. Which kind of makes sense because if it were a physical game, if I borrow you the game, I can't be playing it if you have it. Now, although I appreciate the idea, I'm not quite convinced I'm a fan, because it's not still the same thing as buying a physical game. Because you can't just open the doors to new types of problems. Now, I have three issues I'd like to discuss, and each one being more severe than the next. The first one, and I think this one is really just a minor issue. For instance, I travel a fair bit amount with what I do for work. So let's say I am out and about, I'm in a different province, and I decide to bring my Switch 2 with me, and I buy a game. That just so happens to be a game key. Well, I'm going to need a reliable internet connection, to which hotel rooms rarely have. So it's weird that I can't just pick up a game, buy it, plug it in, and play it. It just is a little bit odd. Second of all, and I think this issue is not something people are talking about, one of the reasons why I like physical games is because storage for them is a lot cheaper. I paid $80 for this IKEA shelf and look how many games I can hold. A lot. Because these games are stored on either the disc or the cartridge, whatever it may be. But digital games end up using a lot more storage on your device. And I think right now is such an odd time to start passing on the responsibility of storage to the customer. Because us as consumers with the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be more expensive to buy more storage because we can't just buy any old SD card. We need a express SD card. So you mean to tell me the time you decide to increase your reliance on us to pay for storage is when it becomes more expensive. That's a little weird as well. But the biggest issue of all that I have with this is what happens once the eShops close down. And I feel like for the most part, that's exactly where people's mind went, because we already went through the whole thing with the 3DS eShop closure and the Wii U eShop closure. Believe it or not, people owned a Wii U. Not much, and I'm one of them. But now if I want to go and buy a new game, I can't. The only way I can get a game is through eBay. But this is also an issue because even if I went on eBay and I got a game key card, but the eShop is closed, am I still going to be able to download it? Probably not. So what exactly am I buying long term? It's just a case that I can display on my shelf temporarily before it kind of just becomes obsolete? It's really something that we have to consider as a consumer. And I think it's something that Nintendo as the company should be considering as well, because it's kind of in bad faith if that's how it's going to end up being. Now, let's look at what I personally think about all of this, so let's look into it. But first, I have a short message. If this is your first time here, hey, my name's Acadrien and I post weekly Nintendo videos just like this. So if that sounds like something you would enjoy, I would greatly appreciate it if you would simply consider to like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's go right back into the video. Now, what do I personally feel about this whole game key situation? As I mentioned before, I do appreciate the new point of view they tried to go with. You know, like, people typically get upset when companies try new things, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that everything sticks, but you never know what will and what won't. You're going to have a lot more misses than successes, and again, that's completely fine. With that caveat aside, not a fan, I'm going to be honest with you. Now, I do know for a fact that Nintendo is not going to be the ones using these game keys because for the most part, from what we've been seeing so far, they're going to have their full games on the cartridges because that's what they're doing with Mario Kart World and that's also what they're doing with Donkey Kong Bonanza. But personally, I will be avoiding, for the most part, every game that will only be on a game key. Now, there will be exceptions that I will allow myself, like for instance, let's say there is an indie game I want to buy, but the only options to buy it is either going full digital or a game key physically. I will opt into the game key because I like the idea of being able to share games with people. The only other exception other than that is let's say there's a game I really want to play and you know the only way you can get it is on a Nintendo console, but the only options you have is once again digitally or a game key. I will also allow myself for that, but other than that is going to be a strict no for me. But for the most part, when I look at the launch lineup, I'm obviously going to be getting Mario Kart World, as a lot of people will as well. But once I'm done with that game, the only game I can presently see myself buying is Cyberpunk 2077. Because it's the only game that is going to be completely on the cartridge and not just a game key. And I much rather support games that are going the extra mile to make sure that the game is on the cartridge. But again, that's just what I plan on doing. You do what you think is best. I'm not your mother, I'm not gonna tell you what to do. But with all that being said, I want to hear now from you. How do you feel about the Nintendo Switch 2 whole game key situation? Let me know down in the comments. I would once again like to thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. And if you did enjoy this video, why not check out another one? For whatever reason, YouTube thinks that you'll enjoy this one, so try checking out that one next. And until next time, Wadao.